This is to do with the escalation between the Pakistan and the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now, according to reports that are now doing the rounds, at least 7 members of the Pakistani forces who tried to cross the Durand line in Gomal, Paktika have now been detained by the Taliban border forces. Now, these are, remember, reports that are doing in the Afghan media. But what is interesting is that the Pakistani government has chosen at this point of time to neither confirm nor to deny these reports. But this latest escalation is in line with the recent clashes that have been reported between Pakistan and the Taliban on the 1st of January. Members of the Taliban using a military truck decided to destroy fencing and barbed wire that Pakistan had tried to erect along the Durand line. Now, on the face of it, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has claimed that the border issues with the Taliban will be handled diplomatically. But with the way things are unfolding on the ground, it appears that diplomacy may have very little elbow room in sorting out the very contentious issue of the Durand line border between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
बुनियादी मकसद ये था कि दफ्तर खारजा की राय में सन 2021 सफारती लिहाज से हमारे लिए एक नुमाया साल था, एक अहम साल था और हमारी जो डिप्लोमेटिक आउटरीच है उससे हम बहुत मुतमईन हैं। मैं चाहता था कि आपके साथ उसके जो खदोखाल हैं वो शेयर किए जाएं।
Although that is what Shah Mahmood Qureshi has said, but the reality on the ground is very different. There are clashes that have been reported at different flashpoints, such as in Nimruz and also in the Nangarhar province. And these clashes have taken place between the Pakistani forces and the Afghan border force, which has painted a very different picture in terms of how the relationship is actually playing out between the two neighbors. The Taliban's Defense Minister Mullah Yaqub has also issued an internal directive to the Taliban forces saying that in case the Pakistani soldiers enter into Afghanistan, then the Taliban should not wait for his orders to deal with such an incursion. And complicating the relationship further is an attempt by the Haqqani network to shed the impression that it is a Pakistan proxy. This, of course, is a calculated move to try and bolster the Haqqani network's standing within Afghanistan. Another aspect that has also strained the relationship between Pakistan and the Taliban is the posturing by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which interestingly has made no secret that it is a part of the larger Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan under the Taliban. Now remember, the deal that was struck by the Imran Khan government with the TTP is in complete tatters, and this is of course proving to be a huge headache for the Imran Khan government, largely because of the aggressive posturing by the TTP that has virtually made this an urgent internal threat for Pakistan's own security that the Imran Khan government will have to deal with. Now, in this time of crisis where international aid has dried up and the meeting of the OIC nations in Islamabad has yielded little in the form of resources for a cash-starved nation, the Taliban has of course been very appreciative of the aid that has been sent by India. Remember, 6 tons of Indian medical supplies besides 500,000 COVID-19 vaccines were handed to the relevant authorities in Kabul to assist the people of Afghanistan in this time of dire need. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what's actually playing out between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we are joined in by senior journalist Amer Shaheen, who's joining us live from Lahore. Now, Amer, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast and WION. And let me begin by asking you this. What's actually happening between Pakistan and Afghanistan? We've seen repeated incidents where the Pakistani forces and the Afghan forces under the Taliban have virtually come to blows over the issue of the Durand line border.
So Pakistan is not very comfortable calling the Durand line because that is de facto essentially the international border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and that's what Pakistan wants to call it, the international border. So So there are two narratives at play over here. The first narrative is that the Taliban government is saying that Pakistan's army is coming inside Afghanistan in the eastern and the western province and building fences within the Afghani provinces. However, another claim that they make is that even on the international border, the Taliban government is not happy that Pakistan builds the fence. Now, Pakistan's point of view is that the fence is there in order to obviously maintain security and to enable proper trade, and it is for the betterment of the two countries. Two countries, there's a lot of infiltration and a lot of terrorism happening. The Taliban government talks about it and says, we don't want the fence between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We don't want it because the people don't like it. The Afghan people don't like it. And once they don't like it, we don't want you to build it. So obviously Pakistan has a right to build a fence, but Pakistan is in a bit of a fix because Pakistan, the DGISPR, has, he's being very careful. They're not trying to condemn the Taliban. They're saying both the Pakistani Foreign Office and the Taliban spokesperson, both of them are talking about diplomatic ways to handle it. But the problem essentially started when not the mainstream media in Pakistan, but the social networking sites like Facebook and YouTube people started sharing these videos in which the Taliban fighters were seizing rolls and rolls of barbed wire and removing it from what appeared to be the international border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And this is what prompted the authorities, especially the authorities on Pakistani side, to address the issue. They say that they were understanding. There wasn't an agreement, but they were in an understanding that the Taliban government would have no issue for Pakistan to continue fencing, because most of the 2,600-kilometer Durand line, the international border, most of it is already fenced. So Pakistan was taken by surprise once again. Let's not forget DGISI of Pakistan, the chief spy of Pakistan. He went to Afghanistan as soon as Taliban took over, and very famously he was having a cup of tea with them, just to tell the international world that they know what's happening in Afghanistan and they're on top of the game. But this is the second time. The first time the embarrassment happened when the Pakistani Taliban, the TTP, were supposed to be handled by the Afghan Taliban, but then that didn't happen. And now
I'll come to the question of TTP in just a moment. I'll talk to you about the issue of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan in just a moment. But I want you to shed more light in terms of what's actually been happening in the last 24, 48 hours, because there are reports that at least about 7 of the Pakistani forces have now been detained by the Taliban border force, and we've heard no kind of a reaction from the Pakistani side, especially considering as to how close the relationship had been of the Pakistan's intelligence units, such as the ISI, with the Taliban. Why is there such a strange bit of silence on such an important issue where 7 of the Pakistani forces, we are going to understand, have been captured by the Taliban border force?
I mean, this is a situation that happens when a Frankenstein's monster lives next door to you, takes over a country called Afghanistan, and unfortunately, we were caught red-handed supporting that regime. So now that Frankenstein, I'm not sure, I don't think anybody is, if it's true, if those soldiers were captured. I'd be surprised, actually, if that's true. But imagine if it is true, Pakistan's military and the government, which is very close to the military, would be in a very embarrassing situation. Even if it was true, I don't expect, unless there is a video of that happening, I don't expect the Pakistani government, the Foreign Office, or this military spokesperson, the DGISPR, admitting to any of it. I also think that it's very unlikely that 7 soldiers have been captured. I'll be very surprised if Taliban have actually crossed that line and abducted 7 Pakistani soldiers. I think if that's the case, it will be a very, very difficult line to go back to.
Absolutely, indeed. And that is why the silence from the Pakistani official establishment, the silence from them is so surprising. My last question to you, of course, is on the issue of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Now, they've gone on record to say that they actually see themselves as a part of the greater Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan under the Taliban. How is this even acceptable for a sovereign nation like Pakistan, that one of these factions within Pakistan now has virtually said that it sees itself as a part of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan?
Even the Taliban, the main Taliban of Afghanistan, have disowned the Pakistani fringe of TTP. We were already always told that those Pakistani terrorist Taliban who were killing our children, the army public school where hundreds of children were killed, killing our journalists, our businessmen, and our common people in parks, those were the bad terrorists, bad Taliban, and the good Taliban were the Afghan Taliban fighting for Islam in Afghanistan. And what happened is we tried to negotiate with the TTP with the help of the Afghan Taliban, undermining our previous strategy. Pakistan side also became very close to the spokesperson, Ehsanullah Ehsan, who had claimed to kill all these children and journalists and citizens of Pakistan. Even he kind of escaped from Pakistan, and he was allegedly in Turkey after. How can you, as one of the biggest terrorists of the country, escape without any glitch and go to another country? So the TTP has been categorically over and over again being disowned by the Taliban on the Afghan side of the border. However, practically when we're trying to negotiate, with our Pakistani Frankenstein's monster and Afghanistan's Frankenstein monster, there is no clear narrative. Of course, these people, these bloodthirsty people using the name Taliban, are the same people, and this is a lesson for every country in the world. I understand if you're sending medicines, vaccines, that's a separate thing. But people need to understand, if you are going to have diplomatic ties with Taliban,
right.
Taliban are not elected rulers of Afghanistan. They're not. They're going to behave in a very erratic manner. They may be your ally today, and tomorrow they might be capturing your soldiers. And this is a lesson Pakistan needs to learn as well, because Pakistan this is the second time Pakistan is severely surprised by the actions of Taliban, and I don't think this sequence of surprises is going to end just yet.
Absolutely, that is what it looks like. This is not unlikely to be the last event of sparring between the Pakistani forces and the Taliban or the Durand line. Thank you very much indeed, Amar Shine, for joining us and getting us all those insights there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.